Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this session on resilient cities. I hope it's going to be more than just nice, but we appreciate your participation at the end of what has been an exciting but quite a long day. My name is Megan Rowling. I'm a journalist. I am the editor of Zilliant.org, which is a news website and an online community for resilience practitioners. The website address is Zilliant.org. This is a partnership that we have been working on with the Rockefeller Foundation for nearly 2 years now. And the Thomson Reuters Foundation, for which I work, produces the content for this website. The Thomson Reuters Foundation is the charitable part of Reuters News, and I've been working there for quite some years now and set up the climate change coverage in about 2006. So we've been doing this for more than 10 years, and resilience is something that has really come to the fore in the last few years, especially, I would say, through the lens of cities and climate change. Now, the top line of this session is resilient cities anticipating the unexpected. And thinking about this, I wanted to mention what the chairman of Lloyd's of London, the insurance marketplace, Bruce Carnegie-Brown, said to me recently. I was interviewing him about some research they'd published showing the very high levels of underinsurance in the developing world, about $160 billion worth of assets unprotected. And alongside this, Lloyd's and the London-based Centre for Global Disaster Protection had put out another report highlighting 4 ideas for innovative finance for resilience. So as I was talking to the Lloyd's chairman about this research, he said to me, it's important to look at resilience building work hand in hand with insurance, because you can deal with expected losses through resilience measures while insurance takes care of the unexpected losses, because the system won't work if there are insurance claims every year. So that got me wondering whether the title of this thematic program should actually be Anticipating the Expected, as really I think that we still haven't done that particularly well. Or at least we should be doing that in places that can afford insurance to deal with the unexpected. And in places that can't afford insurance, it could be argued that anticipating both the expected and the unexpected will be a stretch given limited resources. But of course, there is a growing body of knowledge on things that can be done to protect people from risks such as natural disasters, violence, unemployment, or energy and water shortages, all things that matter for resilience. And the urgency of deploying those tools is growing as cities expand fast, and the interconnectedness and complexity of modern society brings systemic and cascading threats on a planet that is heating up at the same time. But one thing is clear. Local governments need all the help they can get in moving urban areas onto a low-carbon resilient path, and intelligent use of information, data and technology to both understand and manage modern-day shocks and stresses are going to be a bigger ally in the coming decades if used well and wisely and in an inclusive manner. Technology can be a useful tool, of course, for enabling the development of systems with a greater ability to withstand and respond to sudden impacts, as well as running those systems more efficiently and cheaply and allowing for wider participation. But it also requires research, cooperation, planning and financing for effective implementation, and we're going to hear about some of the emerging trends, promising areas and potential barriers today. In the first half of this session, it's going to be split into 2 halves. In the first half, we'll look at ways in which cities can become more resilient using data. In the keynote speech, that will have a focus on the use of data in transitioning to low-carbon energy systems. In the dialogue that follows, we'll be looking more broadly at how data can serve to build urban resilience, what are some of the emerging models, and the challenges in making those work. And then we will have a break. And in the second part of the program, the thematic panel will explore more broadly what a successful resilience strategy looks like, how companies and international institutions can help cities put those in place, and also we'll be touching on the use of innovation and technology to advance urban resilience. So with that, we will move to our keynote speaker today, who is Gerard de Leede. He is Professor of Practice at Geronimus Academy for Data Science, based in the Netherlands, in the field of smart energy and entrepreneurship. The JADS, as it's known, is a collaboration between Tilburg University and Eindhoven University, and has been going for about 2 years, so it's a new and exciting venture. Gerard is also an entrepreneur. He has funded 3 solar companies in the last 10 years. And from 2014 to 2017, he was Chief Technology Officer at Heijmans, which is a leading Dutch construction company where he led the smart highway team. So Gerard is going to speak to us today about how data can accelerate the urban energy transition, and he's going to explain how data can help make that transition meaningful and clear to the people who need to understand exactly what is going to be happening in their cities with energy. Thanks, Gerard.
Good afternoon to everybody, and thank you, Megan, for introducing me. I also hope it will be more than nice, because my work and my work field is more than nice. But it's up to you how you feel this presentation that I will give to you. It's just a brief moment of time that I can take you into the energy transition and what data can do for you and all of us in the energy transition. First, a short introduction. JADS, it was already mentioned, is a data science research and education university. Founded 2 years ago only, so it's very young, but very dynamic, and is situated in the beautiful city of Den Bosch, which is now known as the data city in the Netherlands. Because the city itself is not only investing in the use of data, but also education and research is part of it. And it is also the first university that fully focused on data science in Europe. So high expectations and high dynamics, as you can see from this picture. It's an old monastery, in fact, where we are located, but the dynamics of the future are there every day, and you can feel it by the students, which are very enthusiastic about what they do and try to improve society. Urban energy transition. I think 99 or 98% of the scientists agree that we need to reduce the CO2 that we produce, and we have to do it fast as well. So that's no news anymore. It brings big financial, social, and technical challenges to us. But in general, I see from let's say the news that a lot of focus is on the cost of it, a lot of fear from future developments, and it neglects mid and long-term benefits that really are there, and I try to explain a few today to you. So, the few I try to put over the stage this evening is that power outages can be reduced if you make use of smart energy and local grids solutions. Definitely the energy transition will lower the energy prices for all of us. It will take a while, but we will be, judging on your age, we will be seeing it happen. I will show something to that, and it is already creating a lot of new jobs. And not to forget, I think it's very important to involve the citizens, and it's very difficult as well, but data can help doing that. To start with the jobs. This one I took from internet, and just a year ago, 250,000 people in the US are already working in the solar industry, and that's twice as much as people are working in the coal industry, and this is just the US. There are a lot more people. For example, China is doing more than half of solar installation throughout the world. It's amazing, and I think a lot of people don't even realize that. Looking at the figures, this graph shows the gray, let's say the coal and carbon, gas-fired power plants, and you see that the energy is decreasing year after year. That is created by that coal-powered plants. On the other hand, the renewables, the green ones, are coming up and already are more than half of the new build power in the world. So it's happening, and I think this slide, just read a few of the lots of data that you can see there. Many countries, many regions, you can see that the cost of solar energy, in this case as example, is 2 point something cents per kilowatt hour. I'm not sure if everybody knows what the energy bill is, but it really is cheaper than coal. And these are even old numbers. They are 1 year old and they're already records are beaten and 2 cents has already been passed. So costs are going down, and you can see that here in this graph. Who knows, I like to see, who knows double logarithmic graphs from high school, maybe? How to read them? So it means I have to explain. Not many people. It means that since the 1980s, the cost of solar energy are going down and down year on year. And you can see that. It's going down. The cost is expressed in this number. It doesn't matter if you don't understand the number, but it's going down fast. And it's going down by 24% every doubling of the capacity that was installed in solar panels worldwide. Now, what does that say? It says a lot if you understand that doubling takes only 3 years. Worldwide doubling of solar panels, 3 years, and you have the double amount that you installed ever before. So, it means that the prices are going down by 8% every year. Does it mean you have to wait with buying solar panels? I don't think so, because the subsidy programs are also going down. But anyway, it shows that the cost is going down and down and down. But there is a big but if you look from technical perspective, and that is that we all have to deal with the grid, the electricity grid, which was built for getting from big central production of energy and going down into the grid from high voltage that we all know. I think every country has it, at least in Europe, to mid-voltage grid and to the low voltage at your front door. And that is something, the energy is going from centralized to decentralized generation. Even if you have a small solar field or you have a house or an office, the energy will turn around. So it goes from central to decentral, and that has implications. And it goes from rather fixed, you know, what to produce for the next day, to anything can happen because the weather is determining what the wind will be and the sun will be. It means that we have to really better plan our future, because this is a very complex task, not understood by many people, and if we don't do it well, we will pay the price and we will be slow. So it's a double price, because the carbon will raise temperatures and will have a big negative effect on the planet. I'm going to show you a movie that helps introduction how you can plan better the future.
Earth, an incredibly complex system. Laws of nature have created an immense diversity of plants, species, and landscapes. Humans have made this system even more complex by creating societies, high-rises, transportation systems, and electricity networks. As humans, we were born to live in this complex system, but not to understand and manipulate it. In this era, we face one of the most pressing problems in human history. We have to transform our cities, transportation systems, and electricity networks. And this is not only a technological, social, and economic problem, it's an interdependent combination of the above, and our brains can hardly conceive it. We try to come up with strategies to solve this problem, but we can only base them on rough assumptions. At Zenmo, we have also faced this problem, and that's why we built virtual testing labs. We can create virtual labs to address the most pressing decisions that have to be made in this energy transition. City governments experience an increasing adoption of electric vehicles. When and where do we need to place charge points and fast charging stations? Grid operators need to know how to make their gas and electricity grids future-proof. Governments that are struggling with regulations concerning solar and wind energy, we can make a cost-benefit analysis in terms of money, CO2 emissions, and social acceptance. Because we have been developing methods to model complex systems in transition at the Eindhoven University of Technology. The essence of making strong decisions is to look at the system as a whole. Let's open our minds for the solutions of tomorrow. Visit us at zenmo.com.
So from this movie, you can see that there are tools that help us predict the future, and we should use them for doing the most optimal, low-cost arrangement of the future stuff that we have to do for the energy transition. This is the data-oriented study that was done with the grid operator from the Netherlands. I'll go through it briefly. It's just showing that you can use data from new sources, and you can extract data from sources like this transformer house, which is really not disturbing privacy because many consumers are behind it, so there are no real privacy issues. But you can measure what's going on, and usually these transformer houses are dumb. We don't know what's happening there. They just sometimes don't operate it anymore, and the network goes out. You have an outage. What data can do is take measurements from it, and that's being done in a project in the Netherlands that's going to be rolled out for 30,000 of those transformer houses. And on a daily basis, you can predict what will happen the next day based on the history and based on the weather data for tomorrow. And this graph is showing you the past with the blue curve, and it's showing the prediction for tomorrow. And this is very helpful to prevent power outage, for example, because you can offer, when there is a lots of need for selling energy on the platform, like from your electric car, you can sell it if you have some energy left in the batteries, or you can buy from the grid battery that's left over. So the whole energy market is going to be much more dynamic, and there will be an energy trading platform, like all of you know the taxi platform, you may be using it, and you know the hotel platforms. And this cuts out the middleman, in fact, and this is going to happen in the energy market simply because there will be regulation in place in just a couple of years from Europe. This time regulation is before the changes on the platform, and the regulation enhances the possibilities of trading energy like from farmers or neighborhoods or just private users. And you can become member of a local energy community that will be trading the energy all together with a lot of members from this community. And this regulation system arranges the energy flows that I just showed you on a European basis, on a national basis, on a large country basis, and a really local basis. And this whole legislation is called Winter Package, and it's really going to change our world. It's not seen that often, it's not published that often, it really is going to change the world. Next, I'd like to show you how do we involve operators, and that's the final movie I will show. Sorry, how we will get the public to understand what is going to happen with our energy system and what are their benefits, which is really the most important.
Won't Connect offers spectacular new technology for the creation of an interactive virtual reality of individual homes, buildings, districts, and complete cities. The display of the buildings is generated live from interactive BIM models. Every change in that model is immediately visible and available. People and organizations are also included in the information architecture, and also other kinds of data can be integrated. This makes the technology suited for a wide range of purposes. The application of this technology is currently limited to the Netherlands, but is screaming for international rollout. The heart of Won't Connect is a groundbreaking new principle for interactive 3D BIM models. The models and their properties are dynamically generated based on a DNA string. This makes them extremely flexible, and it also makes it possible to store a large number of models using very little data. Just the DNA string is captured. Won't Connect real-time generates detailed models and can combine those models to larger units like buildings, districts, and cities. In the virtual copy of the reality, like this one we created for the city of Amsterdam, you can zoom in from the level of a complete city to a district, to a single residential building and even to any individual apartment and its construction details, materials and installations. The same goes for the information about the residents and data from external sources like energy consumption, potential for solar energy, etc. One Connect can provide information on any level and for any goal and any stakeholder, including the inhabitants. The definition of the dynamics of One Connect models is done by a specialist, but after that, no BIM engineers are needed to update or change the models. They can be adapted via the internet at the touch of a button. Every choice changes the genes in the DNA. And from that, One Connect automatically generates a new 3D model, drawings, and calculations. Therefore, One Connect can also be used for the design of future scenarios. Any user with the right access can create plans for new residential buildings and future scenarios for renovation. They just have to make choices in the flexible repertoire of housing and renovation concepts that are included. Thus, One Connect can facilitate processes in various areas, like making future scenarios based on detailed information about individual houses and inhabitants, facilitating and connecting smart city applications, management of buildings and public spaces, the acceleration of energy transition and sustainability, design of new housing and renovation of existing homes, rollout of flexible building concepts and new products, getting commitment of inhabitants, generating data for commercial goals, and so on.
I think this short movie gives you an idea what this kind of tool can do to help you. It gives a lot of technical information on the one hand, but more importantly maybe it also does show you how the kitchen will be and how your new bathroom will be and how your house will look after a renovation, and of course what will it do to the energy bill. So it is an effort to try to take people, everyday people, into the benefits of the energy transition that we are all undertaking. At least in the Netherlands, it's approached in this way. And I think internationally, there will be a lot of similarities. So, concluding, big data can help us jump into this future that is quite uncertain, but has good things to offer to all of us. Thank you. Switch?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have the dialogue now. But I'll say if people want to ask.
Sorry?
Okay. Thank you very much indeed to Gerard for that exciting look at how we can expect data to help with the urban energy transition going forward, especially when we get to see how small changes to the buildings in which we live and work can actually reflect back on how energy is consumed and how we go about using it. Now we're going to enter our dialogue, and for that I'd like to invite Elaine Trimble to come up from Siemens and Jason Whittet from 100 Resilient Cities. And just to say that if you have questions for Gerard, we will have a Q&A session at the end of this conversation, and Gerard will come up and participate in that as well. So in this part of the program, we're going to be talking about the intersection of cities, technology and resilience. We're going to be discussing the nexus between those three things and how to use big data and technology to enable cities to thrive in the face of the multiple pressures that they face. Digital innovation, of course, is moving fast, as we just heard. Combined with mass urbanization and climate change, this is having big impacts on cities, and big data is being asked to help make things work in that context. But perhaps we're not quite there yet. With Jason and Elaine, we're going to talk about where we've got to, what's working, what isn't working, what are the challenges, where are the hard nuts to crack. So I'll just introduce our two speakers first. Elaine is Director of Urban Development and Resilience with Siemens Cities team. She works with cities to create an understanding of the role technology can play in building smart and resilient cities and helping them achieve goals, whether that's improving air quality, reducing congestion, or using technology and transport to improve city services. She also leads on the Siemens relationship with 100 Resilient Cities. So I guess you two know each other already. And she spent 10 years with Arup before joining Siemens. Jason Whittet is Associate Director for the Solutions Development and Innovation team at 100 Resilient Cities, which is a network of cities from around the world set up by the Rockefeller Foundation. And 100 Resilient Cities helps those cities put in place a role, which is Chief Resilience Officer, and we'll be meeting some of those in the later session, and then to develop a resilience strategy, but Jason will tell you all about that. And Jason works at the intersection of technology and communities, which is a pretty exciting place to be. He previously served on the Smart Cities team at AT&T and GE, deploying smart connected urban infrastructure. And before that, he worked with International Data Corporation's public sector practice, and he was the Associate Director of the Massachusetts Broadband Institute. So, Jason and Elaine, let's kick things off by chewing over how you both define urban resilience in this digital age. What kind of capacities are we talking about? What does resilience mean when we're talking about it from a data and technology point of view? Jason, let's start with you and how you see that at 100 Resilient Cities.
Absolutely. So first, let me just thank the Congress for even having this conversation. I think resilience has always been a part of the Congress track, but I think this expanded focus, and particularly overlapping with Resilience Week, has allowed a lot more of the chief resilience officers to come participate. And I think that's really important for the conversation, is to get more people that might not normally come to Smart Cities Congress to be here. And then going into resilience. So resilience is your ability to survive and thrive in the face of challenges. And so when we think of urban resilience, it's the citizens, it's the systems, it's the communities, it's the institutions that make up a city, and their ability to overcome, to survive, to adapt, to thrive in the face of challenges. And for challenges, we define those as shocks and stresses. So shocks are the big kind of cataclysmic things like floods and earthquakes and tsunamis, the things that can just level your city. And then stresses are the things that you live with every day. So maybe an overtaxed transportation system, litter, bad air quality, the things that make it harder to live and to work and to play in the city. And then when you put a data lens over that, you mentioned the strategies that we work on. So we fund the member cities to develop a comprehensive resilience strategy. And we've got about 50% of those in, and it allows us to go in and look at all of the data. What are the shocks and stresses cities have identified as being essential to their resilience, and then what are the initiatives that they need to do to overcome those challenges? And it's allowed us to do things like get really good data points to understand how to cluster cities, what cities are dealing with seismic activity, what cities are dealing with water scarcity, and that's giving us the data to help identify how to put people together, how to support peer-to-peer communications, and then how to find solutions that will work for multiple cities, which is a big part of what we're doing, is not just to go do kind of ad hoc solutions, but to find things that are replicable beyond the 100 cities to the rest of the world. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. It's just putting into practice, I guess, which is the hard part that's coming now, right?
All you need is Siemens and you're set.
In that case, Elaine, if a city wanted to build its resilience from the viewpoint of, say, energy, what would that look like within your work? How would you go about helping a city look at its energy resilience and improve that using technology and data?
Oh, certainly. I mean, a lot of cities, I think probably up until a couple of years ago, didn't think that energy was something they should be thinking about. They were thinking, oh, it's the local utility company. I'm a city, it comes, we use it, that's kind of how it is. But I think Gerard in his introduction really kind of said it really well, that energy is moving, it's becoming decentralized. And I think that's happening for a couple different reasons. One kind of being a climate change, but really I think the technology is there to have decentralized energy, and the resilience is important because this big, the big production facility outside of a city that pumps into a city, that's I think that's changing. And this idea that you can actually have kind of more renewables and all these different things coming on at scale, that's the big fundamental difference. But you can't have that kind of intermittent power at scale without having to kind of rework the grids. You see a lot of things happening at the very local level. And we see things that we call kind of like virtual power plant networks, or different kind of networks working where you are actually bringing in these different elements, so it's not having to force the grid to have major changes. The grid will have to change, but it's going to change over time. It's also kind of an evolution versus a revolution, something we talked about too, that you can't change a city's infrastructure overnight, but you certainly can start to kind of change at the margins. I think energy is one of those places where we've had a huge ability to do that. And there are a lot of amazing projects out there, but one of my favorite ones is certainly what we're seeing in New York. It's called the Brooklyn Microgrid. It's a fantastic project, and what I really like about it is that it's all happening within the community, so kind of back to the local community initiatives that Gerard was talking about. So you have PVs on the rooftops, and people actually sell power to each other using the existing grid. So no one's rebuilding the grid system. No one's saying, okay, we're going to have two grid systems and double up on or make it redundant or something. We're using the assets we have, but we're using them better. And they're using technology to measure who's generating what, who's selling it to whom, and who's using that. So they use PayPal, they use blockchain, and a bit of Siemens to kind of balance it out. But what I like is just that it's local, and it's good, and it's kind of bringing all these different pieces together, and then it kind of also leads to tokenization of energy and kind of whole new business models that I think we have yet to really fully understand.
And I just wanted to ask you also, I think you've done some work in Puerto Rico, which obviously faced particular challenges with its energy when it was hit last September by Hurricane Maria, and suffered power outages for a very, very long time. I think most of the power has been restored now, but for months on end, people were lacking power, and that highlighted real challenges to the resilience of their power grid. And I know they've been rethinking that to a certain extent. What's been going on there? What has that revealed, and what is the solution, or at least ideas of a solution?
I mean, this is one area where I think we've really been working with 100 Resilient Cities. I think, and thank you for all of the work you're doing. We've had a local team that certainly was based in Puerto Rico and was looking at the infrastructure. But then, but it's also kind of, as a company, how do you get traction with the public sector? I think that's where organizations certainly like 100 Resilient Cities are so important. And essentially, they have to rebuild everything. So they have such an opportunity to rebuild better than what could be, but the federal government of the US rebuilds to what's existing. That's what the kind of law says. So to rebuild differently requires a different kind of really perspective. And what our local team really came up with, which I think is pretty genius, is not just kind of a microgrid, but a series of mini grids kind of across the island, about 6 or 7 grids, where you could actually have decentralized power across the island. So you'd use some of the existing facilities that are there that can be repaired, and then you would supplement that with renewable energy. We're talking about 35% more renewable could be brought online because of this type of system. And then should one fail, if one of the mini grids should fail, the other grids can also kind of take that and move the power to where it's actually needed. So what I kind of like about it is it's kind of inherently resilient. And when I talk to my engineers, I'm an urban planner here, so not an engineer, but they really talk about kind of really that resiliency, kind of this, really kind of what is resilient and what is, you're really going after that. It has a low probability of happening, but a very, very high impact. And this is where that kind of thinking can really make a difference, because you still have a very viable grid, and you actually are getting new types of energy on there, so a whole different business model to evolve. And that's what I think is really so interesting about it.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to ask, Jason, to what extent are these exciting, innovative ideas featuring in the development of the resilience strategies that you've been working on with the cities in the 100 Resilient Cities network? Quite often we're hearing, that about the different problems that those resilience strategies are being set up to address, and each strategy contains a lot of actions, and some of them are existing actions being brought together, and some of them are brand new. And so I'm wondering, to what extent this new way of thinking is bubbling up.
Why do I get all the hard questions? I think Elaine hit on it, actually. There's you can break technology down into two things. There's the evolutionary and then the revolutionary. And so it's either something, if you were to go out onto to the expo after this and look at every booth, and look for the use case. It's either mimicking something cities already do, and it's incremental evolution. It's digitizing something, or it's a big change. It's kind of like a moonshot, and it's saying, "Hey, cities, we want you to do something completely different." And I think obviously it's easier for cities to adopt something that is smaller. And so when we go out to your question with the cities and looking at their initiatives, there's kind of two ways they're going about it. One is investing in the kind of the vertical infrastructure, the foundational infrastructure, so cloud, networking, applications, base applications, cybersecurity, those kind of foundation that you build off of. And then I think if you look at the more mature cities in our network, they're trying to do that at an enterprise level and get beyond the program, get beyond the agency, and find the things they can do as a city. And then when you get into the solutions, kind of the niche solutions, they're more of a horizontal. So how do we use data, or how do we use IoT to help solve traffic, waste, water, energy? And a great example of this, if I can, we do an event called City Exchange, where we bring together 10 global mayors, 10 venture capitalists, and 10 startups. And the company that you worked with in Brooklyn, LO3, was one of the companies that came. But there's another one, Remix. Remix is a company out of San Francisco, and it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but they've digitized bus routing. And what they did is they took a really stale, antiquated process, and they digitized it, and they took what used to take 4 days to route, and they made it a really inclusive 4 hours, and allowed the engineers to be able to go out and work with the community and work with others and re-envision how bus routes can go and touch different folks. So I think it's those types of solutions that are more incremental and also more inclusive that are more exciting for what we're getting for feedback from cities.
Right. I just wanted to say, as I forgot to mention this at the beginning, that I shouldn't be the only person asking questions. So if you have a question for Jason, Elaine, or Gerard, you can use the Ask and Vote option on the Smart Cities Expo World Congress app, which if you would like to do that, you probably already have it on your phone by now. So please do use that if you would like to ask a question electronically, and I can bring that in a little while, or we will also have the old-fashioned way of asking questions as well. Yeah, so I mean, Jason mentioned some of the good examples, again, of the way that data is being used this time for the bus route management. I'm just wondering, stepping back and looking at the big picture, obviously it's exciting, cutting edge, we're all talking about these things, this is why we're here today. But to what extent, Elaine, are these solutions actually being deployed? What are we still at the beginning? Are we really making progress? How much further is there to go for cities to really kind of get to grips with these methods?
I mean, as amazing as the amazing stuff we're seeing out there, I think it's still such incredibly early days. I think most cities I talk to, they tell me they have great data, and then when you say, okay, all right, great, let's look at it, let's work with it, and then you realize that actually maybe it's not as great as they thought it was originally. And that's no disrespect for any city, it's just that it's tough. They have different silos, different departments, and so I think it is really early days. But what I really want to stress too is that we're looking at resilience and cities that succeed and compete, and who might even actually still exist in 30 years if all these kind of, all these predictions come true. You know, those are going to be the ones that actually plan and actually kind of do something and actually do think about resilience today and start to plan for resilience. And I think that's really, really important. But I also think with all of our smart tech out there, all these whizzy things we're looking at, I think if our smart tech does not improve the quality of life of people, then I think we've also somehow failed. I feel like we're kind of going to technology because the challenges are big and we have the ability to use it. It's kind of, it's that perfect storm of kind of, you know, the technology is there, cities have really big challenges, and people have a willingness to kind of play with data and to use it. So I think all those pieces together, our challenge is how to get that. How can cities start to kind of go through and cleanse data, find out what they have, but really figure out what their challenges are. I think they've, you know, doing data for data's sake makes no sense. You know, talk to people, figure out what your challenges are, and then what data you have available, and then what can you do with it.
And the point that you make about the need for it to make a city a more livable place is absolutely crucial, right? Otherwise people won't understand why we need to go down this path. And it was said in the opening session here today, that this has to be put at the service of citizens. So Jason, I wanted to ask you a kind of double-pronged question. Within the resilience community, measuring the resilience dividend, as it's sometimes known, is a work in progress. Quantifying the benefits of resilience work is a tough one. Something that there's some methodologies out there, but measuring perhaps the way that resilience builds social capital is very difficult. So, I mean, we can maybe work out in terms of dollar signs, how much we reduce disaster losses, or how much you can save by moving from fossil fuels to solar power. But you work with communities and technology and how that plays out with communities. Do people feel at this point, do you think that using big data and technology can actually bring major advantages to them in their daily lives? Is it obvious?
I don't know if it is right now. I think that's a big thing, and this is not an attack on the Congress at all. But there's 8 billion people in the world. We're a pretty small subset of people who decided somehow to come to Barcelona and talk about smart cities and resilience. And I think it's kind of incumbent on us to expand that to the rest of the world. And one of the things I feel like is that the average, the real people on the street sometimes feel like technology is something that is done to them or not necessarily with them or for them. And I think something that all of us, and particularly I'm kind of shout out to the vendors in the crowd, I think, and again, I don't want to get in trouble with the Congress, but you think of how much time and energy we spend on events, and could we do more to go into the actual communities and touch the people that our products and services are meant to serve, and help with that education and help people understand what is the digital transformation. And I think you're seeing this in cities. And again, I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble, but if you look at Quayside in Toronto, on paper, Google Sidewalk has done everything right. I mean, their community engagement strategy is exceptional, but they're getting a lot of pushback on data use. And I don't think it's necessarily their fault, and I wonder a little bit, are they getting penalized because—
You mean in terms of privacy?
Exactly, so I'm not sure that's, I think they've taken steps to try and say, look, we don't want your data, we're not going to do bad things with your data, but what is the process? What's the right way to explain this to the community and include them so that people are saying, yes, this is good. We want this, we understand this, we want to adopt and use this, as opposed to maybe a knee-jerk reaction of, no, don't do this, which isn't going to help us make cities better, more resilient, or solve any of the challenges, which, as you mentioned, we're kind of under the gun. And the big thing with the community I think is missing, and I think it's certainly missing out here, is the sense of urgency, which you touched on. If you flash forward to 2050, there's some, 4,500 cities in the world that have over 100K population, like half of them, 2,200, are on the coast. They're going to start to feel the impacts of climate change, of urbanization, of all of these things over the next 30 years. And some of these solutions are not overnight. They're 10, 20-year fixes. And so if you're not working on these now, your ability to mitigate the negative impacts of your resilience shocks and stresses is going to be impacted. And if you were to take all of those cities, I think what you'll see is that some are going to do better than others for a whole host of reasons. But to your point, those that take time and energy today to engage their communities are clearly going to have an edge.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a process of learning by doing, isn't it? And, we've got to be doing it while we're working out how to do it better at the same time. And Elaine, you've obviously got a lot of experience of working with, business and then cities and different partners. What are the most interesting and effective seeming business models to be engaging in for this type of work, would you say?
I would say, certainly business models are evolving. And but I do want to kind of, just kind of one point on that, but back to the data question. I think when we're talking to people, I think the biggest issue kind of looking at a city is you can automate certain things, so you can actually, okay, if people behave one way, we can automate something to actually maybe save a bit here and there. But behavioral change is still fundamentally huge in what we're talking about. And so if we really want people to act differently, we have to tell them why we want them to act differently. And I think that is where the whole data angle has a real opportunity, because you can send information to lots of people, and some people will get it, some people might not, but it's all about having that conversation. If you want them to kind of have an electric car, tell them why, because the air is polluted. And I think what Gerard was talking about earlier too, which we've hardly touched on, is if we really are serious about carbon and air quality, we have to electrify our heat as well as our cars, plus we keep buying gadgets. So, which is great, but it just means, it's all good, but it means that we need so much more power. So the business model for that is going to be something we had not seen, because are we going to ask the grid company to fund that? Are we just going to pass that cost on to the consumers, to all of us, or are we somehow going to find a new way of doing that? So I've heard people talk about actually pricing local power as cheaper than power that comes from a centralized station. I've heard that coming down the route. I've heard people saying, we're talking about mobility now as a service as opposed to just, buying a car, all these different models. And I think we've seen, I think the short answer is that a public sector here and a private sector there is probably not what the future is going to be anymore, because cities aren't going to become IT companies, and they aren't going to become probably other types of service providers. They already have enough to deal with. So what is that going to look like? I think we're talking to cities about digital, about how can they start to partner with the private sector and take the great parts about certain existing enterprises and bring that into the public sector to actually then have a new model. So, on-demand transport, it's genius. Public transport can do that too, or partner with the right private companies. There are several of them out there. That's just one opportunity. But how do you make sure it's not people just going to wherever they want to go to, but actually going to public transport hubs to actually then use public transport to incentivize them to use existing infrastructure? Lots of business models. There's a really genius one in the north of Spain where they're actually, the more public transport you use, the cheaper your ticket becomes. So it's almost like a loyalty scheme. So we've seen kind of that at the very kind of person level, but then the big utilities will have to be rethinking their business model too. In cities, in countries, if you're taxing electricity as a revenue generator for tax, then people aren't going to buy electric cars. So you've got to be thinking of that model. So I think the business model at the national level, the state level, the city level, whatever. And I think where cities are so interesting, I think cities are the one bit where you can be visionary and deliver at the same time, where I think other parts of government don't have that same ability, and that's why it's so exciting. So I think it's a whole new world.
There might be people in the audience who are participating in some of these business models that Elaine just mentioned. So if you would like to ask a question to Jason, Elaine, or indeed Gerard, please do grab one of those, one microphone over there, and there's one microphone over there, and maybe we could take a couple of questions, or I don't know if we've had any submitted already from the tablet. I know we're running a little bit behind time, but I didn't want to skip over this part, so we can run for another 10 minutes, I hope. So one of the most upvoted questions here, which they're submitted anonymously, I think it's probably for Gerard. Or, well, whoever would like to answer. The question is, what did you learn from designing the data dashboard for non-technical citizen users? Yeah, I guess in terms of presentation and how to make the whole concept accessible, I felt as if I might have needed to study it for a little bit longer myself.
What did you learn from another approach? Was that the question?
Yeah, what was the learning from designing a data dashboard like that for non-technical users?
Yeah, in the Netherlands there's 7.5 million houses, and there is a sort of top-down approach led by some central initiatives organized through government support, and it was really top-down. And you see, especially in the social housing sector, people are not really interested in this story. They are very afraid they will have to pay more. So putting it in a top-down approach and making the house net zero energy is not a good idea. Taking the measures that bring money into their wallet, to keep money in their wallet, they are very well possible. You can do. You can start right away. Of course, you have to explain what you're doing. You can have some tools there and go to the kitchen table and explain to people what is going to happen and what's interesting to discover. They are highly interested what other improvements of the house are taking place as well, like the bathroom I mentioned already. And that's really the trigger. Don't focus too much on technology. It's nice for the energy bill, but the other stuff is definitely much more important to the people that live in those houses.
And can I jump on
Yeah.
that for 1 second? So I think this is a perfect example of the type of technology or the type of use case that wasn't really possible even just a couple years ago, right? That evolution of the cloud and data capabilities. And a practical example, so we're working in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has 1 million housing units. 300,000 were severely damaged, intrusions through the roof, what have you. Another 70,000 were so badly they need to be torn down and rebuilt. And then there's still a shortage of another 70,000 housing. And they've got a cadastre, but when you start looking at this BIM data, so incredibly powerful when you overlay it with the FEMA data and other data to really understand the portfolio of housing and how best to meet the housing needs of the island with the funds that will become available from HUD and other sources. So very powerful tool.
Right, but I think one potential issue, we've touched on it a little bit, but it's come up again here in the questions when you're interacting with non-technical people, with citizens giving you their data in order for you to be able to use it, is this privacy and data security issue. And how do you decide what is ethical is the question here. Is this something that people are just getting used to over time and everyone is getting better at providing the right reassurances? Is it something that crops up in your work?
I mean, it's something that's really crops up in our discussions with cities, because cities, particularly you who are cities out there, some of the data you've collected by chance. You haven't meant to. You got it from building permit applications, and so you kind of have it sitting there. A lot of cities are just unsure of kind of what to do with it. So I would say, but this idea that you don't want to do anything with is also kind of not an option, because there's a lot you can do to improve services. So I'd say it's an evolving conversation. I think citizens have to get their heads around what they think is valuable data or personal data and what's not. I mean, is energy use really that personal to you? And could that be something that could actually help the city deliver something better, which is very different than other forms of data? And people do sign off all kinds of things on the little agreements that you get online. So I think it's about having a conversation between the cities and other vendors or whoever else is engaged about what kind of data will be shared, and then you keep it private. And certainly with Siemens, we work with with agencies that data has to remain completely confidential. So we're used to doing that. We're used to having to compartmentalize data in certain places where that's just how it has to be, and that's fine. But I think it's an evolving conversation that probably a lot of you are actually already having.
And I think perhaps maybe you have the knowledge about the fact that you are using the data well and wisely, but I think, given a lot of the stuff that's come out via social media and some of the problems that have occurred, people are perhaps not necessarily reassured of that. So maybe there is quite a lot of work to be done on that front by cities and by people who are experts in this space. Jason?
Yeah, two things. So one, if you're out there, if you are a business owner, and your business model is based on you owning and using the data, I might reevaluate that. Really, I think going forward, cities should retain ownership of all of their data. And then going back to the privacy, digital equity, there's an amazing woman in New York City, Maya Wiley. She used to be counselor to Bill de Blasio. I think she's spoken here before. But she runs the Digital Equity Lab at the New School, and she's totally got this. So if you're interested in this space, she's someone you should reach out to. I think they've been open for about a year, but they're up and running, and they're full dedicated to exploring those issues.
Yeah. So definitely more work to be done on that front. I'll finish off with one other question that's come in here, which is a broad question, and each of you can have a shot at answering it. And that is that how can the Internet of Things revolutionize the sustainability and efficiency of a city? Now, maybe answering that fully would take quite a long time. But if you were to pick up on one area, one problem that it can help to solve, what would that be for you? I don't know who would like to take that one first. Elaine?
I mean, I'll start probably today. I think that with the IoT, air quality, we can really start to have a real discussion about that and really talk about measures to do something about that. The data exists. European cities, it's regulated, so you have to have it. But a lot of it I don't feel like is being used. So I think it's one area where you can talk about not just having it, but actually the actions on it. Instead of waiting to 2050, what can you do tomorrow or next week?
Right, thanks. Gerard, I guess yours might be in the area of energy.
Well, I think without IoT, the transition is going to get stuck, because the decentralized energy, decentralized generated energy has to go into the grid. And if that is not being measured and keeping track of, even with of course, keeping an eye on the privacy, which can be done, there is technology for that. But if you do not do that, the transition is not going to work.
Right.
Then everything has to be more or less central, and a lot of cost will be put into this grid. In the Netherlands, it's huge. 60 to 80 billion euro are the estimates. If you do it smart, it can be 20 or less.
Right, which is a huge saving.
That's
right?
a huge saving.
Jason, for
Yeah,
you.
I think water, hands down. So about 2 months ago, we convened in Cape Town to work with the city. We did a 3-day workshop with Craig Keston, the CRO there. And if you look at leak detection, agricultural irrigation monitors, as well as consumption, I think IoT is playing an amazing role in helping to reduce water consumption and water waste.
Thank you very much indeed to Jason, Elaine and Gerard for their excellent contributions and highlighting the big challenges ahead. We're going to break now for about 10 minutes, and in the next session, the thematic panel, we're going to hear actually about how some of the resilience strategies that we talked about just now are putting technology and data to use in the practical sense. Thanks very much. Please do stay in the room for that discussion.
And thank you for your excellent moderation.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you. That's my job.
Welcome to this panel presentation session. What does a successful urban resilience strategy entail? My name is Emma Hannula. I work at the Climate Technology Center and Network CTCN. And CTCN is the operational arm of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change technology mechanism. And it is hosted by 2 United Nations organizations, UN Environment and UNIDO. And it is mandated to work with climate technology transfer to developing countries. And today, here we will have 2 different parts of this session. So we will start with a presentation by each of the panelists. And after that, we will have a panel session and also take some questions from the audience. So in our distinguished panel today, we will have 4 speakers. The first speaker is Mr. Amok Naik, Chief Resilience Officer from the City of Atlanta. Amok Naik is an attorney and a public policy professional. He has worked for Google earlier, and also he is involved in city and state politics. The second speaker is Guillaume Lionel, Research and Development Globe Applications Senior Manager from Dassault Systems, which is a software company from France. Then we have Mr. Piero Pellizzaro, also a Chief Resilience Officer from Municipality of Milan. And Piero has 10 years of experience in climate change policies and urban resilience planning. And he is currently the Chief Resilience Officer and the city lead for the H2020 Lighthouse project Sharing Cities at the Municipality of Milan. Then we have Mr. Esteban Leon, the head of Cities Resilience Profiling Program from United Nations Human Settlements Program. He is based in Barcelona. Esteban has a background in economics and shelter and housing, as well as building constructions and reconstruction projects in post-crisis situations. And he has been working for UN Habitat since 2002, based in Nairobi, Geneva, Panama, and Barcelona. So basically, we will start now first with the presentations, and I would like to ask Mr. Amok Naik to come to. Could I please ask this first?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amol Naik, and I am the City of Atlanta's Chief Resilience Officer. I'll start off to say I am thrilled that this many people decided to skip the 30 happy hours that are going on right now to be here. I'm flattered that you chose us over that. It really is an honor to be here today. I don't have a formal presentation, but I'll just walk through a little bit about what we do in the City of Atlanta, tell you a little bit about our city, and then move on to the next panelist. So as you may know, Atlanta is a city that has a lot of global commerce. We have 16 Fortune 500 companies headquartered in Atlanta. We have the world's busiest airport, and it's the birthright of the civil rights movement in the United States. So we're very proud of that rich history. I will say, though, that we also have some significant problems when it comes to equity. If you look at the life expectancy rates in Atlanta, for instance, there's a 25-year difference between the life expectancy rates of the wealthiest citizens of Atlanta and the most vulnerable. 25 years in life expectancy in one city. It's really something that keeps me, frankly, awake at night. And so that's really what a big component of our resilience team does, right? We really look at resilience in a lot of ways as a combination between sustainability and equity. And Mayor Bottoms, who's Atlanta's new mayor in her first year, has made equity one of her key pillars. And when we look at equity issues, to me, the main equity issue of our time is climate change. Because if we look at who is impacted worst and first by climate change, it's the most vulnerable citizens. And we very much feel like that's what's going to happen in Atlanta as well. And so we are taking aggressive steps to do what we can as a city to combat climate change and also to protect and make our most vulnerable citizens resilient. We're also very focused on affordable housing. As you may know, there is a complete lack of affordable housing in many American cities and frankly cities around the world. I know the mayor of Barcelona has made that a major focus of her platform, and we work on that as well. And then on the sustainability front, we sort of have three legs to the stool, which is urban agriculture. We actually had the first urban agriculture director in a mayor's office in the United States, and we've been able to reduce the parts of Atlanta that are considered a food desert by the USDA from 57% in 2010 to 37% in 2016. So we think that the urban agriculture movement in Atlanta, which is strong in a very heavy agriculture state in Georgia, is helping move the needle in that regard. We're also, as I said, focused very, very deeply on energy issues because of the climate crisis. And we were one of the first two cities in the United States to receive the American Cities Climate Challenge grant from Bloomberg, which we're very proud of. What we really try to do, in a nutshell, is to find multifaceted programs that have both sustainability and equity components. So, for instance, when we're trying to lower carbon emissions, we like to try to do that in the most impoverished neighborhoods. The carbon emissions and the inefficiencies can be solved while also putting money in people's pockets. And so that, to us, is really the best resilience program. And I'll say lastly that community engagement, which I know we'll be talking about some in this panel, is very, very critical to everything that we do. With community engagement comes buy-in and trust from our citizens, and without that, none of this is possible. So I look forward to the panel discussion, and thank you for having me today.
And next, could I please ask Mr. Guillaume Leonel? Come to.
Will I have a presentation? Would I have the slides or? Hello, everybody. So on my side, I'm most involved in the technology, so I will give you some insights about, from a technological point of view, what we are providing in this area. City resilience is something very complex. We've seen that we have now a chief resilience officer in cities. It's something very important, and I think it will really change the way that cities are planning in terms of strategy, in terms of roadmap, or on tools. So today I will just focus on some specific points where technology can bring some value-added solutions. Just examples of experiences we are providing today. Just to come back on some trends, maybe in the past, smart cities were really focusing on the real-time operation to be optimized. That was the opportunity to get some quick return on investment, but sometimes it may not answer all the long-term questions that cities have to answer. There are long-term challenges for energy, mobility, but also social inclusion, economic development. So it's not only being smart, but also being safe, being attractive, and finally, being more resilient. We also know that in cities, most of the natural resources are consumed inside the cities. Cities are the place where most of the human activity is happening. So it means that the way we are developing cities, the way we think the cities of tomorrow will clearly impact their capability of being more resilient. Saying that, I just want to focus on 4 key points, I think, for me. The first one is long-term decision. In a decision, how we can change the decision-making process to really be in that perspective of a better understanding of the present and a better anticipation of the future. The second one is about sustainability, including the natural resources management, which is something key, and also the capability for the cities to embed a lot of new innovations. A lot of innovations are happening every day, everywhere. So how can city be the right place for those innovations to happen, and how can they really get benefit from those innovations? The second one will be the climate change. So a lot of cities are now having their plan against climate change. It's not easy because you need to have an holistic view of the city, considering all the systems that are quite complex. So it's not easy to get figures of on how the city is running today and how you can simulate the city in the future. The last one will be about risk management, also linked to the climate change, but we know that we have to face also a lot of natural risks, but not only, also economic business risk. So cities have also to face this kind of purpose. Just to go into some levels of what we can do, we have an idea of the city that which is that the city is combining a lot of systems. Those systems are getting more and more complex. You have to embed a lot of new technologies, new innovations, and those systems are getting connected one to each other. It makes something very complex to handle, and we also have multi-scale systems. So we are starting from smart object to smart buildings, smart districts, smart cities, and all those systems are connecting one to each other. There's also governance issues to manage all those systems all together and to connect all the actors that are playing in each of those systems to make them work together. What I wanted to show then is just a short video of what we're doing in the city of Rennes. What we are providing is a virtual world. So what the aim of virtual world is the capability to better understand, again, the present and better simulate the future. So introducing the capability of displaying all the complex systems while designing, for example, a new metro line, so compute isochrones for simulating the impact of this new metro line, display things in 3D design because it's a way of better communication for the projects, and being able to federate all the actors of the projects, from architects to real estate developers to utility providers, and try to make them work together. Thinking that having all those people working more efficiently together, we will be able to have better solutions. Here we can see some simulation results about environmental impact of a project. I mean, displaying some sun simulation, noise, pollution. And finally, we are also seeing that we are able to use 3D mockups to communicate to the citizen. We know that social inclusion is also something important. How can we involve the citizen in this new decision-making process that will be set around this new technology? So finally, we say, okay, we want to provide some new experiences using all those technologies. It's a long journey, but maybe all those technology will help cities in being more resilient, or at least try to build a plan for being more resilient in the future. Thank you.
The
next presenter will be Mr. Pier Pellizzaro, and he will talk about the Milano Resilient City Strategy. Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you very much once again to be here at this time until everybody is drinking outside. I'm Pier Pellizzaro. I'm the Chief Resilience Officer at the City of Milan. The City of Milan has introduced an urban resilience department since last December, and this is through and thanks to the 100 Resilient Cities Network that was funding this opportunity. But this is also like a big challenge for the city as well, because there is a funding opportunity from the 100 resilient cities, but the city itself is funding with more than €500,000 every year more people, because they realize that the city has high risk on some specific topics. Let me just say that nowadays Milan seems to be attractive for everything, right? It's attractive for investors, it's attractive for real estate, it's attractive for smart cities, it's attractive for tourism. We become a touristic city and we didn't realize yet. But the city of Milan has high risk. During the last few months when I was appointed, I was starting looking at the local climate profile of the cities. So how the climate change is impacting the city. So we love the polar bear, but when you go to a people in the city, you should explain what is happening there in your city. So we discovered, for example, that the city of Milan has an increase in temperature of 2 degrees. So globally is 1.4, and we are 2 degrees higher than 50 years ago. At the same time, we have discovered that in the city of Milan, we have a plus 35 tropical night every year. So that's a mean tropical night. It means that you sleep with a temperature over 20 degrees for 35 nights more every year. And what is the impact? The impact is on productivity of our people, and is on quality of life, is on comfort. When you design building, you should also keep in mind there will be more hottest nights. Yeah. At the same time, we have seen, well, I can give you an example. Last week, we got a storm, or the corporate call storm. Maybe in US should become hurricane or something, but we have wind of 120 kilometers was affecting the cities. This is a huge and something new that never happened in the city. That is meaning that 250 trees fell down. We have 2 people that were injured, but this is meaning that there is a lot of damage. But for something that we were not prepared, wind basically, because normally the Pianura Padana, the land is not windy at all. But at the same time, that 3 days, we have seen the amount of rain of 3 months happening in 3 days. So, and this is something related to built environment risk. But what about social, following my colleagues? Well, the city of Milan is having 30,000 people coming into the city every year. So we are increasing the population of 30,000 people. And every year, we have seen that there is an increasing of plus 15,000 over 85 years old population in the cities. So we are becoming an aging population, and but at the same time, we are having 30,000 young people coming. So when you design the city, you have to balance it, the elderly people and the young people coming to the cities. So this is like 2 examples. At the same time, we are a touristic city, so with more demand. But when I come to the office, I'm working on resilience since 10 years, and I mean, resilience could be like smart, circular. I mean, it's a hype, as could be all the others, until we showcase what is resilience. So when I'm now in the process to design the resilience strategy, I'm not doing a strategy. We are doing like a pipeline of a pilot project, because we need to put the resilience, making resilience happen on the ground. But the first element is setting the rules. So we are in the time of reviewing the master plan of the city, and the deputy mayor asked us to have one of the pillars, suppose it has to be resilience. So we are modifying a set of rules for the future urban regeneration process, identifying how is the resilience index in terms of drainage of the water, in terms of heating, how we can cool down the city to 2 degrees. And what we have identified, and we have launched a new program, is the urban forest program. So we want to create an urban forest with 3 million trees to be planted there before 2030 in the metropolitan areas. It's not only tree as we know tree, because then the wind comes and they fall down the tree, but it's also related to food production, for example. It has to be food policy supportive to get a more urban forest. Yes, because if we have local production of food, that could also reduce the mobility of food and reduce the pollution. At the same time, we are looking at natural-based solution as an option. So phytoremediation is part of that. And together with some Dutch partner, platform partner on the under-resilient cities as Deltares or Arcadis, we are introducing the concept in the master plan of building with nature. Building with nature is that we are going out of concrete, we are going out of materials and thinking of the nature as a key driver of the future development. And what does it mean? I'll give you an example. 10 years ago, the city of Milan has to retrofit the water waste management plant. There was a retrofitting with the concrete, but at the same time, we start growing a wetland, or what we call in Italian a bosco umido, and then after 10 years and next years, this wetland will start to receive wastewater and clean the water to back then use it for agricultural purposes. So we get reducing energy, we are reducing the use of infrastructure and technology, and we are using the nature as a way to managing the wastewater. So that is a concept of resilience, because when you think of resilience to be like a win-win solution among smart, resilience, and circular, these are the three drivers of our topic. At the same time, and this we learned from Atlanta, that is how we exchange, was in March. I was defining the preliminary resilience assessment pillars. There are 6. One is circular, one is cool not because of the fashion of Milan, but it's to cooling down the city. One is next task, looking at the infrastructures, because we need to retrofit 50% of our infrastructure in the next 20 years. So how we can work together. That was colleagues from REN were saying. Then there was living Milano, so how we can improve the comfort and how we can welcome refugees and migrants in our cities, because we are open to that. We are not closed as many of Italians say that is the government. We are open, Milan is open to everybody. But at the same time, we are also looking at safer Milano, and safer Milano comes after Atlanta. So cybersecurity become an issue because we ask, and we are here in a wonderful exhibition, an expo, to become smart. But the city administration are ready to be smart in managing the data to protect the information of our citizens? The answer is no. The city administration, as the private, are not ready at the moment because we are too exposed to potential risk. And only effort to make it could be done to improve the quality of our resilience in terms of managing data and to protect our citizens in the future of their life. But so the resilience, what we are defining at the moment is not inventing the wheels, but we are using the existing urban planning tool, the existing policy tool, and use that as with a new, or looking at that with a new lens to make resilience. So when we speak about the resilience, we should avoid to speak about how we envision resilience, but how we can look at indicators, index, and existing tools to make resilience happen, not tomorrow, but today, because it's not anymore a linear society, it was a risky society. Thank you very much.
And our fourth presenter will be Mr. Esteban Leon, and he will present UN Habitat City Resilience Program. Welcome.
Thank you. I think we are going to pass a video first. Are we ready with the video? Yeah.
Today, our cities and their inhabitants are facing new and amplified challenges as a result of rapid urbanization, a change in climate, and social instability. From earthquakes to flooding, rapid immigration to cyber attacks, all cities face a range of shocks and stresses, natural and human-made. Unplanned cities are, however, more vulnerable as they often suffer from pre-existing stresses or fall victim to cascading shocks. A resilient city assesses plans and acts to prepare for and respond to hazards, natural and human-made, sudden and slow onset, expected and unexpected. What's more, resilient cities are better able to protect and enhance people's lives, secure development gains, foster an investable environment, and drive positive change. Resilience concentrates on how individuals, communities, and business not only cope in the face of multiple shocks and stresses, but also find opportunities for transformational development. Raising awareness is the first step to increasing engagement in resilience actions. By telling stories of real cities, taking real actions to protect infrastructure, functionality, and inhabitants, we can all promote capacity building and partnerships for more resilient cities. We want to play our part. So UN Habitat is presenting the Urban Resilience Hub. The Hub is the new platform for knowledge, best practice, and innovation in urban resilience and will help make our cities flourish. So what can you expect? The latest news and thinking on urban resilience. Showcased work and results from cities across the globe. A space for communities of practice to grow and collaborate. A tool to raise awareness of the importance of resilience action. You too can also be part of the Hub by contributing your reflection pieces and articles to the Food for Thought, or share your video stories on the Resilience Pill section. Contact us for more information. Join the Hub today and keep feeding the discussion on social media. Let's make our cities resilient.
Thank you. That way I don't have to talk. No, we should go back to the 8 minutes or 7 minutes because it's still counting. I think that I don't understand what you are doing here still. You know, it's late, and we've been the whole day talking about resilience and city resilience and urban resilience and what is resilience and all that. And I want to take you out from that part and try to think in something else. And I'm going to make it up while we talk. I was thinking, I was challenged in the back of the room because we were listening at the conversation, and somebody was saying to me, why you don't just say something else? Try to come with something new, you know, because defining resilience is quite boring nowadays. It's quite of a heavy topic these days. But I want to go back to, I was thinking very recently, I don't know how many of you know about the economic theory of Malthus, Thomas Malthus. Thomas Malthus had a theory in 1800, actually. We are going back 200 years ago. And his theory was that the population growth is too high and the food is not going to catch up with that growth. And therefore, at some point, we will have too many inhabitants and not enough food for all of them. Malthus, the theory of Malthus, I think is quite famous. I think that many people read that one. But I think that it was proven that he made a mistake. It was a theory that, he didn't consider technology and the way of growing food or multiplying food chain by new technology and new ways of producing this food. But I think that it was, in a way, that was one of the issues. I have 3 minutes. I'm sure that I will develop this in a bit more. In a way, he was right, and in what he was right was that the exponential growth of population has proven that, in the last 60 years, we went from less than 2 billion to more than 7 billion people. So population growth is an issue. By the time of Malthus, in 1800, I was checking just now, the population of the world was 1 billion people. So if you think that, 1 billion people in 1800, in 1950, 2 billion people. In 2000, we are in 2018, more than 7 billion people. That means that it grew in the last 70 years, 3 times the number. If we think that in 2050, we don't triplicate, but we go double, we are in 14 billion people. Population is multiplying. Okay, food, we can go and we can bring new technologies and we can make, we can feed all these people, perhaps. I think so. But the world is not expanding. And that's the part that I think he didn't. I will call this the Leon's theory. Because if you think, okay, he was relating population and food. I'm now relating population and the world, the space we have. The space we have is not expanding. The world is the same size. The population is growing, but the world will remain. The only way that we can change this or make sure that the population growth, because his theory was also that we should prevent natality, but that's something that has been proven impossible. And it will go against if I say, well, we have to start controlling natality. But at the end of the day, if we don't start building better cities, if we don't start planning cities and making sure that cities are compact and we can put more people into those cities, if we keep expanding in the way that we are expanding and we've been expanding in the last 200 years, we are going to arrive to a point in which we won't have a space for food. We will arrive to a point in we won't have natural resources. We will arrive to a point indeed people won't have anything to eat or to drink. And we will have a world that is going to be quite messy. I'm 55 seconds too late, no? I know. So I think that we have to think that in that big picture, we have to think that if we are destroying with the way that we are, the pattern of development of cities is destroying the world, one, and it's also putting us, all of us, at risk. So if we don't change that trend, it's going to be quite heavy, quite soon. So I will say, there is no option anymore. This is not a matter of building resilient cities. This is the only option we have. So if we don't plan better, we don't build better, then we are going to be in big, big trouble. And that's something that we have to think. And we are seeing it now. We are seeing it in the population growth, and we are seeing it in climate change issues, and we see it in all what's going on in this world. My time is over, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So now we will start the second part of this session, a panel discussion, and we would also welcome questions from the audience. And you can use the Smart City Expo application, and you can use the option for Ask an Audience. And there you can write your questions, and you can also vote for the questions that are already there and put them upwards on the list. So, thank you. So let's start the discussion first by discussing what are the main challenges impacting cities' resilience today. And would Esteban like to start? Do we have the microphones? So what are the main challenges impacting cities' resilience today that could be taken into account in cities' resilience strategies?
Thank you. Well, I can continue with the theory. And now I don't have the clock here. Well, the main challenge, I mean, I mentioned a bit in the presentation, population growth, urbanization. The world is urbanizing quite heavily. More than 50% of the population is living in urban areas. We predict that it's going to be even more. We predict population growth, demographic growth. We see some cities that are really poorly managed and poorly planned. We see that, you know, I mean, you have cities that you have to do quite a lot of things if you want to start building resilience, really. And we see that we have little time. So I think that the challenges are quite large. The good thing, in order not to be so negative, because otherwise, you know, we are going to go all crying. This is like a therapy, you know, group. I think the good thing is that we are more inclusive now, and we are pushing further. And I mean, this is the proof. You know, I mean, we are sitting here so late that we should be at home by now. But we are sitting here so late talking about these issues. And I think that this is something important, and it's something that if we keep this movement going, we can make a change, and we must make a change.
Thank you. And what about, what are the most important elements to take into account when planning for the city resilience strategy? Maybe, Amol, would you like to answer?
Sure, happy to. I also realized now that I may be the only panelist who English is my first language, so I'm duly impressed by everyone's presentations. If I had to do this in another language, it would be very bad. I think, you know, really when we're looking at this issue, it reminds me of the words of perhaps Atlanta's greatest son, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which is, he really feels we really feel the fierce urgency of now, right? And I think that is, to me, the greatest challenge, is that, as Esteban said, we have to act now. And it is a daunting challenge, but it's something that we have to do. There are a lot of issues with sort of acting now, though, right? In the United States, a large percentage of the population doesn't even acknowledge that climate change is real. And so because of that, I think, to me, one of the most critical components of any resilience strategy is community engagement. And you have to meet people where they are, not where we want them to be. And so people generally, unlike the folks in this room, if you go to the general public, people's eyes sort of glaze over when you start talking about these issues, right? It just seems insurmountable, they don't believe you, whatever. And so, to me, engaging people where they are and explaining how this helps their lives in ways that are greater than just sustainability is a real key component to a resilient strategy.
Thank you. And what could be the roles of different stakeholders in the process of planning for cities' resilience strategies? Maybe Piero? Yeah.
Well, yes. First of all, I would like to apologize because we are like 4 men and only one women. It's supposed to be different and more equal on the stage. Also because resilience is more women than men, actually. That's also in my office. I have more candidates coming from women than from men to apply for that. So that's I think is important. Participation, I think is essential. I try to give you an example. We are now moving to tactical urbanism to try to change the cities. And to move to tactical urbanism is meaning that you try to change for a few days a square or a corner. You put out cars from there and you make people living again the public space, having, I don't know, a tennis table, or having like other kind of social activities. Because when you have to change the cities, you have to make people part of the changing. You cannot impose, it could not be top down. So you decide which are the rules. So you have to define the rules, but when you define the rules, it should be based on pilot, where the peoples are showing, yes, this is exactly what I want. Even when you close a street because you want like to get like the super block here in Barcelona, you have to make the changes happen in this way. So I think that it's one of the first elements. Participation is not only, well, I invite someone at the conference, it's working with the people in transforming an area for real. So that is one of the elements of our resilience strategy. Stakeholders, as we have done with smart cities, we don't have a smart cities plan, we don't have a smart cities strategy. We have smart cities guidelines that enable smart cities, but enable private and community to become smart. So because we cannot define a plan without having resources or say, oh, we promise something in time, so even politically it's not really good. But it's more easy and it's more effective if you enable the participation of the private sector together. Because at the end of the day, even when you change a lamppost, it's our utilities companies making. It's not us as a cities, it's not my colleagues. My colleagues have created the vision. So even that, we are, with the resilience strategy, we are enabling transformation, setting the rules, and using pilot as a way to make the people feeling that they are part of a revolution, because this is what Esteban was saying. We need a revolution in a city approach, so that is what we think in participation.
Thank you. And what about technology transfer and innovation? What would be the role of technology transfer and innovation in city resilience strategies?
Talking about innovations, we've seen that sometimes the solution, first we have to do something now. So it's just what can we do? And we have a lot of things, small pieces of things we can implement rapidly, quickly. And I think technology can help just get those innovation, connected this innovation and implement it as quickly as possible, validate it inside the city. Then about the, you're talking about technology transfer. I think the technology has to be also affordable and replicable. It means that what we are doing in one city should be replicable to other cities. Most of the cities are looking at what the other cities are doing. So we are all interested in what the others are doing. So the technology will also be something that will be replicated from one area to the other area. Even if the solutions are different, the way we are trying to find solutions may be sometimes similar.
Thank you. And what about the best approaches for capacity building with regards to urban resilience? Maybe Esteban? Capacity building, yeah.
Well, I'm in the Malthus mood now. So, if you think that I think if you go back and you think that the theory was killed by technology, because actually he didn't predict that technology was going to advance, and perhaps the only solution we have is to add this technology nowadays, use this technology nowadays, capacitate and build capacities nowadays with this new technology in order to switch and perhaps extend a bit more of the process. And I think that that's key, because, you know, what you see out there when you are, in my kind of previous life, I was doing humanitarian response and disaster response and conflict response. And what you see there is that these local authorities especially are overwhelmed with what's going on. They are overwhelmed with this migration, they are overwhelmed with these cities that are growing so fast, they are overwhelmed with lots of things. And the second thing that you see is that they lack capacity to respond to that, because the movement is so massive that they have no time for that. So for me, the only way to catch up with that is to prevent and to go anticipate and to start building capacity at that level, at the local level, capacities, authorities level. So then they can start actually thinking long term and planning long term. So, I mean, it's kind of, capacity building is a must. It's the only way that you can actually, you know, and I will even go further. I think that the only difference between sustainable development and sustainable urban development and urban resilience building is that component that you say, well, sustainable development is something that should keep going in normal times. But when you have shocks, stresses, as 100 Resilience Cities also define, you have shocks and stresses, and you have this kind of new challenges and hazards, there is when we have to kick in with the resilience part, and we have to start thinking that, hey, this is not only one part or one city. This is more than one city. This is something that is affected by different systems in the world. So whatever we do here has an impact somewhere else. And that connects with the financial crisis as well. I mean, the impact of the financial crisis is something that comes from different places, and of course is connected. So it's not only that the city systems are connected, but also the whole world is connected. And that's something that we have to think very clearly. Whenever we do some policy and we start working on national policies, we also have to think that those national policies are going to affect other nations of the world. And this is what is happening as well when you see, you know, some policies on, or more evidently when you see the conflicts in countries. I mean, the conflict in Syria, you can see that all that migration from Syria is going to some countries, and they are putting some stress into those urban systems in different countries. So basically, one cause is causing some impacts in a different place. So it's quite heavy.
Would you like that?
Can I, just because it's something, next week we will start a new working group among Milan, Turin and Genoa after the bridge in Genoa collapsed. And the people were saying, why are you working with Genoa on the bridge that collapsed? Well, 30% of the goods coming to the metropolitan area of Milan coming from Genoa. So basically the collapse of a bridge in Genoa could strongly affect the economy in Milan. And even more, what is expecting that 80% of the goods was coming at the harbor of Genoa, they're now moving to Rotterdam, another part of the cities, of the 100 resilient cities. So somehow this is affecting the economy, but maybe because we are working on the resilience in both, we can even create an opportunity for us to improve the connection with other cities. So it's also transform risk in opportunity. And I think it's exactly something really important, because we have seen this with migrants. The migrants was a shock in 2015, 2014. Now it's a stress compared when you define it as a methodology, because there is no time to thinking if we want or we don't want. We have it, and we need to manage. And that is because it's a proper human right to give this person a food and the bed. So there is this time and space that is two elements of resilience in the strategy that is essential. And the space is not anymore the built environment in the city. It could be even bigger.
Thank you. And let's talk a little bit about funding, because planning for resilient cities would require funding as well. What different tools are there available for financing urban resilience? Amal, would you like to answer?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I think the private sector has to play a significant role in this. It's sort of an all hands on deck moment. everyone needs to be involved. We in Atlanta have long been blessed with a very active corporate community. Our friends from the Metro Chamber of Commerce are here now as we speak. And we've had this this reputation as a city too busy to hate, and that was driven by the corporate community. Similar to that, I think the corporate community needs to step up to the plate with some funding mechanisms. Maybe a 9% return is okay when you're building resilience versus a 13% return, or whatever the numbers may be. There are all sorts of innovative things that the 100RC network, I don't know if Jason is still here, have presented as well, but fundamentally, all of these projects are very, very capital intensive. They're long term. They're not sort of politically sexy, you know, they're things that you are doing for the long run, but it takes a lot of money. So there are a number of very well-intentioned folks working on different funding mechanisms, but ultimately that is going to be a major, major component of building resilience because these projects are very capital intensive, as you know.
Thank you. Then let's talk a little bit about inspiration of other cities. I'd like to ask you, has Milan used inspiration from other cities when planning for the resilience strategy? And if yes, then which ones and
well,
how?
One already mentioned was Atlanta, because
yeah.
we learn from experience, let's say. Well, we look at Paris and the school oasis that have this new project on improving the quality of the built areas around the school for kids, but also to improving and to cool down the cities, because improving the green around the school, you make the kids more safe in terms of health, but at the same time you can use that as a community garden and to cool down the city, so that it's really something important for us. We learned from Manchester and their approach to, after the terrorist attack, how they were capable to react with the bees campaign, but at the same time how reviewing the risk, the disaster plan, let's say, risk disaster plan, I can't remember the name, anyway. But then there is some other experience that we are looking, Athens. Athens was, somehow was almost crack, and now it's becoming a new way of thinking the city. The cool district example they are now planning, they are painting the road with white colors to cooling down. They are looking at the equity in the cities, so also their social program to improve the resilience of the poorest people, that's part of the element. So it's an amazing, from UN Habitat we learn a lot as well, what they experienced, their Resilience Week in these days, it's a good example how also city together can share their experience, and that it's good. So we have a lot of good, because at the end, there is a lot of resilience action already going, but we just need to classify in the proper way and make that a business case, because then it's financing that is one important part.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's take a couple of questions from the audience. First one from the audience. What about if a citizen is not willing to share data? Will that citizen be excluded? Would you, Guillaume, or?
Should the European Union, you should ask.
I think it could be interesting to have a kind of digital twin of the city, and that this digital twin should be a common asset for all the stakeholders, citizens, city, and the business. So maybe they will not share the same data, but there are some common referential data that should be shared at the ecosystem level, because it has value for everybody. Then if we are able to connect the people, work together, it's kind of having all those people working together, it's smarter. Technology is just here to facilitate, to make people working together and make things smarter. So I think having a common asset could be something interesting.
I would also say the answer to that has to be no, that they will not be excluded, because if you are getting data on energy consumption, say from homes that are sophisticated, that automatically excludes homes that don't have that sophistication. And those are the folks that we're really most focused on helping, as the most vulnerable people in our society. And so I think we as municipalities, private sector, have a duty to make sure that if someone isn't sharing data for whatever reason, that they're not excluded. We have to find a way to capture their needs as well.
And there's a second question very similar to this one. How do you ensure human rights in privacy and data security?
I wanted to respond to the...
You can also respond to the first one, and you can take the second one.
No, with the presentation, I forgot to mention that we also have a program, which is the City Resilience Program, and we do diagnosis of cities. And we have a methodology that we have been developing, and we calibrated with different cities. And the issue of data and information came up, of course, because it's normal. I mean, we have to remember that data and information is just the means to an end. So for us, there is no point in collecting data massively if this data doesn't help you to do, to take some decisions and to come with something more concrete. So basically, our response to that is that we are not interested in keeping the data of the city. What we are interested in is in using that data to take some decisions. So basically, the data belongs to the city and to the stakeholders, but based on that data, you can pass on recommendations, and those are the important ones. That's the key of the thing. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the end of the goal that we are looking for. I've been in many places where we are discussing with the municipality, and they tell you, we have a lot of information, we have a lot of data, we have collected tons, but we don't know how to use it. Can you help us to select and to see and to tell us which data is useful for what type of decision? And that's the other thing, it's quite clever if you are going to enter into the data collection and data gathering and information gathering part to make sure that you collect the data that is useful and that you are going to take some decisions and can serve a purpose. It goes with the rights. You were saying human rights or copyright?
Human rights. So how do you ensure human rights in privacy and data security?
Because the data with the copyrights is much... that I pass it to you.
Well, I don't know if I have the proper answer on it, but because it's a really good question. But I think that open data is something that could support human rights in getting more access to the information, giving the opportunity to people to also to scaling the things. So our policy on open data that we have is that to make as much as possible all the information open to get the people aware and to get the people engaged that, so we can also try to increase the awareness that there is difference among the community through the capability to read the data and educate people working on the data. So I don't know, because that is really a good question and it's something that we keep back home, how we can contribute with the data management and human rights.
I'd say it's also a challenge and an opportunity for people that are making these smart city technologies. As we know, sometimes smart city technologies, an unintended consequence of that is accelerating things like gentrification. What if we were able to utilize smart city technology to capture data in a way that's secure and permissible and the rest of it to actually push back against those forces? So I think really it's an opportunity and a challenge that hopefully people will start moving towards.
We are running out of time, but let's take one more question from the audience. So actually I will combine two questions. It's about Internet of Things. So basically, how will Internet of Things evolve one's sense of privacy, and who is the owner of the data used in the Internet of Things?
I'm not sure to be the right guy to answer that question.
Internet of Things.
No, but this question I think is linked to maybe to the previous one, because there are a lot of companies proposing objects, connected objects, and having some business model relying on the property of the data. So that makes things not really good, I think, to be implemented. So the question of the data is key, and I think the governance around the data is important. So who is owning what, and the city should be should have the capability to really control where are the data, what's are the data, and to be sure that the regulations also are fulfilled. And we have a lot of regulations, and still the open data exists. We have many areas where I think we are able to handle that, but we have to be careful.
Thank you.
I think we should take the lead. I mean, during the last few years with the market, relation among city administration and the market, we were like just more absorbing the market and not driven the market in that. So at the same time, we need to do that with the data. And Internet of Things is a huge opportunity to improve the capability of the city of maintenance, so with predictive maintenance. We can improve the comfort and not only the energy efficiency in buildings. There is a lot of opportunity to develop healthcare services in a much closer way. I mean, we have thanks to the European Union, because I gave back after my before things, but thanks to the European, we have Open Care. It's funded by the European Commission, and it's helping us to improve the accessibility of shop for people that are disabled in terms of, so they can use all the Internet of Things to make the city more accessible, even when there is like some infrastructural barrier, has walk side and so on. So I think Internet of Things, if we are capable to drive the market and they say, yes, I want this because I want to make more equal society, is because we set the rules. So if you want to use Internet of Things in my city, is that this is the field. So we need to put our hand and our brain and make this happen. I think that is a huge opportunity as well to improve the capability to manage the data driven the Internet of Things and get more efficient services for the population.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all the panelists and you in the audience. And I would now like to ask Megan to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed to all our speakers this evening for fascinating insights. What's been really great for me is that we had a huge range of expertise, people from different spectrums of the urban resilience landscape speaking about their work. So just to reiterate, thank you once again, everybody, for your contributions. I just thought I would sum up a few short points from the discussion today, just to close out. Urban resilience is a thing. It's here. We totally need it. 1.4 million people are moving to cities every week, the United Nations Secretary General said on World Cities Day at the end of October. And as that is happening, we're seeing economic losses increasing from disasters. We've had shocks such as the refugee crisis in Europe and many other things that the speakers today have mentioned. And we need a way of not just coping, but enabling cities to thrive within that landscape. The good news is that actions are happening. We heard about tree planting in Milan. We heard about what's going on in Atlanta around food and climate change and many other positive, concrete examples. And also, what's clear now is that there's a real network and institutional framework developing around resilience. So whether it's UN agencies, cities themselves, the private sector, and more community groups, that is actually something that is going to make this happen. And also today we talked about data and technology and how that is evolving and how that is going to facilitate this transition to more resilient cities. The less good news I felt from today is that the urgency is increasing, and yet we don't have all the answers yet. We're still in the process of developing ways of doing things, finding solutions, and there are big issues that kept on cropping up today around how do we get citizens involved, and when we get data from citizens to enable this transformation, how do we reassure them and make sure that that data is used in a good and right and decent way. So the fact that we're having to do this learning by doing thing means that actually some things may be done wrong. There may be some mistakes made, and one will have to learn from that and assimilate that knowledge as we're doing it. I think there is a need now, clearly from what was said today, to get the funding in place, the technical expertise, which is out there, in fact, in financial markets and organizations and the private sector, but that needs to get to the places that need these services and these resources in order to connect the ideas with the reality and make urban resilience move forward as fast as it needs to. And I'd like to say that this also needs to really happen in developing countries too. We didn't really touch on what's happening so much in Africa or Asia, but there is a dire need for resources not just financial, but technical expertise as well in a lot of countries that just don't have those resources. And I think one of the really important things that came out from the discussion today is that this all has to be explained to citizens, to urban residents, people who live in cities and make up cities, which is probably quite a lot of us here in the room today. We have to use whatever words and phrasing and terminology and hopefully not too much jargon and to explain what we're doing. I'm not really supposed to use the word resilience too much in anything we write about resilience, so you can imagine that gives me a headache on a daily basis. But what we need to explain is how all this work is going to make people's lives safer, greener, and happier. And I think that we can all work together to do that, but there are big challenges ahead. But we have no choice. We have to make a success of it in the end. Thank you very much indeed for your attention today, and wish you a good rest of the Congress. Thank you. Have a good evening.